Finished binging Season 2 of The Last of Us? Between all the different factions and cities, flashbacks, and hints of the future, the timeline can get a little confusing. So here's a recap of the entire on-screen story so far. In the first The Last of Us game, the sudden evolution of the cordyceps fungus comes as a complete surprise. One minute Joel and his daughter Sarah are living normal lives, and the next, one of their fungus-infected neighbors bursts through the back door and turns their lives upside down. HBO's The Last of Us adaptation, on the other hand, lays the groundwork for the cordyceps evolution in its very first scene. The TV series opens with a clip from a 1968 talk show featuring a pair of biologists as the nightly guests. The biologists describe how cordyceps is able to infect the brains of insects and manipulate their bodies to serve its own needs.
There are some fungi who seek not to kill, but to control.
In fact, they lay out the basic premise of the entire series, explaining how a warmer climate might cause cordyceps to develop the capability to infect warm-blooded humans. Somewhere between that talk show episode and 2003, when the show's primary story begins, that evolution happens. Episode 2 of The Last of Us also sheds some light on how the infection began and spread to the entire world. We see scientists make the first discovery of human-hosted cordyceps, and we learn that the fungus has spread through the world's grain supply.
Y'all want some biscuits?
Dad, you love biscuits.
I do.
Unfortunately, by the time anyone realizes this, it's already too late to stop the infection. Once that infected flower shows up, it isn't long before Joel's hometown turns into an apocalyptic hellscape. His only choice is to get his family as far away from other people as possible. Joel, Sarah, and Joel's brother Tommy all pile into a truck and try to find a safe way out of town. Eventually, Joel and Sarah get separated from Tommy and find themselves running from the infected on foot. The two of them cross paths with a soldier who's been ordered to execute anyone trying to leave the area. That's when tragedy strikes. The soldier fires at Joel and Sarah, then steps forward to finish the job just seconds before Tommy swoops back in to save the day. But he's too late. Sarah takes a bullet in the chaos and she starts bleeding out in Joel's arms. Sarah's death is the worst moment in Joel's life, and everything he does after that is an echo of that loss.
Come on, baby girl. Come on, baby girl. I gotta get you up. Come on. Come on, get up. Come on, baby girl.
One thing that sets The Last of Us apart from a lot of post-apocalyptic stories is that the main events take place decades after the cordyceps infection causes society to collapse. The show's very first episode includes a 20-year time jump that takes us from the night the outbreak hits Joel's town all the way to a dystopian future where an authoritarian government controls Boston, one of the few cities where people can live in relative safety. The franchise is surprisingly light on details about what happened during those 2 decades. We know that the Federal Disaster Response Agency, or FEDRA, tried to manage the outbreak in the early days of the infection. Containment fails, and as more and more people begin to die, the agency's remnants become the de facto government in cities across the country. FEDRA does its best to keep people safe, but not everyone agrees with the organization's methods. The authoritarian regime that FEDRA becomes inspires a group of rebels who come to be known as Fireflies. Again, The Last of Us shows us remarkably little about how society collapsed. Because this series is set more than 2 decades after the initial cordyceps outbreak, we only get small hints and glimmers of everything that played out in the wake of the infection. That said, the opening of the Season 2 episode Day 1 gives us a peek at what happened in Seattle after the area was overrun with infected. Thanks to dialogue between Fedra soldiers, we learn that Fedra took control of Seattle when the city went into quarantine. From there, we learn that Fedra basically operated as an authoritarian regime controlling the city.
Took away their right to vote, and somebody started calling them voters to mock them.
We don't know how cruel the agency rule was, but we do know that the group inspired some rebellions. In the episode, we see a Fedra sergeant named Isaac turn on his own organization, teaming up with Seattle citizens and murdering an armored truck full of Fedra soldiers. Isaac goes on to join and ultimately lead the Washington Liberation Front, or WLF, a militarized resistance group that overcomes the odds and takes control of Seattle back from Fedra. By the time Ellie eventually arrives in Washington, the WLF has been running the city for nearly a decade, though it seems like they're now fighting a war with a new rebellious faction known as the Scars. The most important character in The Last of Us wasn't even around for the initial outbreak. Ellie grew up in the post-apocalypse, and she spent the majority of her childhood living in Boston under federal rule. In both the show and the game, we meet Ellie at the same time Joel does, but her story begins much earlier. For the most part, HBO's series follows the game's story beat for beat, but occasionally scenes or stories that expand the universe and our knowledge of the characters are added. The first season's finale gave us one of those scenes when it showed us Ellie's birth. We first see her mother Anna when she's very pregnant and running from some infected. Just as Ellie's mom starts going into labor, she gets bitten. She survives long enough to give birth to her daughter, but then she asks her friend Marlene to kill her before the infection changes her.
Her name is Ellie.
This scene establishes a relationship between Ellie and Marlene and gives some context to Ellie's immunity. Her body's defense against the cordyceps infection exists because of an incredible coincidence. Sarah's death is one of the defining moments of Joel's life. In a similar way, Ellie also finds herself defined by what she's lost. Again, Ellie spent most of her childhood growing up in a Fedra school facility. Ellie's not exactly a model student, and she doesn't get along with many of the other children. She does have one incredibly close friend named Riley, though, and even if you haven't watched the show, you probably know where this is going. One night, Riley and Ellie sneak out to an abandoned mall in Boston. The two of them spend a glorious evening exploring the old shops and playing around in the arcade, and they share their first kiss together. It's a lot of fun, until some infected make their way into the building. Riley and Ellie fight off the infected, but in the process, they're both bitten. So they decide to live out their final moments together before turning.
It ends this way for everyone sooner or later, right? Some of us just get there faster than others.
But when Riley changes, Ellie finds herself staying exactly the same. Ellie learns about her immunity in the same moment that she loses her best friend and first love. One of the biggest changes The Last of Us show made to the game's story led to the series' most celebrated episode. In the game, Joel and Ellie meet with Joel's friend Bill to get supplies to help them travel.
This some kind of joke?
I'll cut to the chase. I need a car.
Well, it is a joke. Joel needs a car.
That version of Bill is mostly treated as comic relief, and players only learn a few details about him via clues scattered around his town. The show's version of Bill, on the other hand, is presented quite differently. Bill is a survivalist who is absolutely ready to live in an apocalyptic nightmare. In episode 3, we get to see all the preparations that he made well before the cordyceps infection became a reality, and we watch how he smoothly transitions to the new lifestyle.
Oh.
Bill's actually happy, living a life of isolation, but everything changes when a man named Frank falls into one of the traps on Bill's property. Bill and Frank fall in love with each other, and at Frank's urging, the two of them begin to reach out to other survivors. They get to become close friends with Joel and Tess while they spend a mostly blissful decade together, but when a disease starts destroying Frank's mobility, he decides to take a lethal amount of sleeping pills. Bill takes the pills with Frank, and the two of them die in bed in each other's arms. Their love story is arguably the most well-made episode in the entire show, and it emphasizes the theme that's present throughout The Last of Us of love persevering through everything. During the 20 years that The Last of Us skips over, Joel builds a completely new life for himself. Like so much of that time period, we don't have many specific details about what happened, but we do see where Joel's journey led him. When we catch up with him in Boston, he's an experienced smuggler, transporting illicit goods into and out of the city, and sometimes making a decent living for himself, although you get the sense that times aren't as good as they once were.
Need the bag back.
We don't know when Joel started smuggling, but we do know who his partner in crime is. Tess and Joel work together. Tess is just as tough as Joel and is capable of handling herself, but the two of them are still highly protective of each other. We also know that they've traveled some of the country together because we see them meeting up with Bill and Frank in episode 3, but for better or worse, they decide to set up shop in Boston. Without Tess, there's almost no chance that Joel would have escorted Ellie across the country, but she comes up with a deal he can live with.
Get her to your crew at the State House, but before we hand her over, they give us everything that we want. If not, we kill her, there and then. Deal.
Really?
Even though she isn't in the story for very long, she plays a pivotal role in setting the wheels in motion. So Joel and Tess agree to transport Ellie for the Fireflies, but that journey was never supposed to happen. Marlene was supposed to be the one taking Ellie to a group of Fireflies waiting in the Boston Capitol. From there, the plan is to take Ellie to the Firefly base at the University of Eastern Colorado, where a group of scientists hopes to find a way to use Ellie's immunity to create a cure for cordyceps. The plan gets derailed when Marlene takes a bullet during a skirmish in the Boston quarantine zone. In desperation, Marlene asks Joel and Tess to do the job for her. They leave the Boston QZ and follow Marlene's original plan, but the Fireflies at the Capitol are all killed before Joel, Tess, and Ellie can reach them. With infected closing in, Tess sacrifices herself to save Joel and Ellie after insisting that he finish the job alone. Reluctantly, Joel agrees to honor Tess's dying wish and begins devising a plan to get from Boston to Colorado. Eventually, their cross-country journey carries Joel and Ellie through the outskirts of Kansas City. While driving through the ruined streets, they're ambushed by a gang of bandits, led by a woman named Kathleen. Joel and Ellie take shelter in some nearby buildings, where they happen to cross paths with a man named Henry and his younger brother Sam. The siblings are on the run from Kathleen and her gang, so they decide to team up with Joel and Ellie to try and escape the city. As Joel and Ellie make their way through the city with their new allies, Henry explains that Kathleen blames him for her brother's death. In order to get the right medicine for his brother's leukemia, he cut a deal with Fedra. They give him the meds, and he tells them how to find a particularly important person.
The leader of the resistance movement in Kansas City. And Kathleen's brother.
Eventually, the four survivors do manage to escape the city, but not before encountering a horde of infected and Kathleen's forces. Here, the TV show reveals a new kind of infected, a bloater, and in the chaos of the battle, Kathleen is killed. Unfortunately, Sam gets bit in all the confusion, and despite Ellie's attempts to help him, has turned in the morning. Henry shoots him, then himself, and Joel and Ellie head back onto the road by themselves. Joel and Ellie are making their way through Wyoming when they happen to pass near a settlement called Jackson. The two of them are approached by an armed band on horseback, but upon realizing that they aren't threats, the group lead the pair back to the town. There, Joel has an unexpected family reunion with his brother Tommy, and he and Ellie find the first bit of real peace they've experienced since starting their journey. There aren't many safe places in the United States, but as luck would have it, Joel's brother lives in one of them. Jackson is the best example of a successful post-apocalyptic society that we see in The Last of Us. Thanks to an impressive wall, the town is well defended, and they've even managed to recapture some of the amenities of the old world, like electricity and movie projectors. Families live peacefully, and everyone shares resources to make sure that the entire community is doing well.
So, communism.
Nah, it ain't like that.
It is that, literally. This is a commune. We're communists.
Jackson is such a welcoming place that Joel and Ellie could call it home immediately, but Ellie still isn't where she needs to be. Joel tries to get Tommy to take her south to the University of Eastern Colorado, but ultimately, he's the one who shows up to ride out with her in the morning. Together, the two head off to finish their journey. They make it to the university without too much trouble, but once again find that the Fireflies have left before they showed up. While exploring some of the buildings, they discover a map indicating that the Fireflies have fled further west to Salt Lake City. But before Joel and Ellie can discuss this new information, bandits arrive, and in the ensuing skirmish, Joel takes the broken handle of a baseball bat to the gut. With Joel in danger of falling off both the horse and the mortal coil, Ellie manages to find an abandoned house for them to shelter in while she tends to his wounds and searches for some medicine to help him fight off infection. Weeks pass, and when Ellie encounters some strangers from a nearby settlement, she offers to trade them a deer for a dose of penicillin. Ellie gets the medicine to Joel but is captured shortly afterward by the men she traded with, and also learns that they're cannibals.
If you want to judge me,
Judge you? You're eating people!
She tries to escape, gets caught, gets free again, and ultimately lets the group's leader David know what she thinks about cannibals, along with whatever else he might have been. Meanwhile, Joel goes through a few battles of his own, but at the end of the episode, they're reunited and ready to leave Colorado behind for Utah. When Joel and Ellie arrive in Salt Lake City, they have the rug pulled out from under them again when they're ambushed by Fireflies and Joel gets knocked out. When he wakes up, he learns that Marlene has also made her way to Salt Lake City from Boston. She tells Joel that Ellie has already been put under anesthesia and taken to an operating room where a doctor will remove the infected parts from her to develop a cure. There's just one teensy problem.
cordyceps grows inside the brain.
It does.
Joel's come to view Ellie as his own daughter, and he's entirely unwilling to lose another child. He goes on a rampage through the hospital and slaughters just about everyone in the building. When he reaches the operating room, the surgeon tries to talk him down, and Joel responds by shooting him in the head. And when Marlene confronts Joel as he's escaping the building with an unconscious Ellie, he kills her too, hoping to prevent anyone from following them back to Jackson. Instead of telling Ellie what really happened in Salt Lake City, he tells her that there are other immune people and that they didn't actually need her to make the cure. He also says bandits attacked the Firefly base, forcing him to take her and run. Ellie has doubts about Joel's story, but she keeps them to herself until the pair make their way back to within walking distance of Jackson. That's when she looks Joel dead in the eye and asks him about the truth.
Swear to me that everything you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
She doesn't entirely know he's lying, but she has her doubts. As Season 2 reveals, the fallout of Joel's lie completely alters the course of his relationship with Ellie in the coming years. The second season of HBO's adaptation begins by introducing viewers to Abby. She and a handful of surviving Fireflies are standing outside the hospital in Salt Lake City, right next to the plot of graves they had to dig after Joel's attack. We see the fallout of Joel's violent actions and get a sense of just how horrific his assault on the Fireflies really was from the perspective of the victims. This opening scene is a vague but important introduction to Abby as a character. We don't understand exactly why she's so adamant about going after Joel, but we do know that she has vengeance on her mind and isn't likely to stop until she gets it, especially when she lays out for her friends in no uncertain terms that she's dedicating herself to killing Joel.
When we kill him, we kill him slowly.
At this point, though, none of the surviving Fireflies have any clue where he might have gone. They also don't know if there are any Fireflies left in the country, but they have heard rumors about a group of survivors living in Seattle. Abby and her friends travel to Washington, where they end up joining the WLF, but all the while, she's watching for any hint of where Joel might be. When Ellie and Joel return to Jackson from Salt Lake City, their relationship is on shaky ground. Ellie has doubts about Joel's story, and she's beginning to wonder if she can really trust him. For a while, though, she's able to push those concerns out of her mind, and they both find some peace and happiness in Jackson. As they settle into the community, Joel and Ellie take up residence in one of the available houses, and for a while, live very much like a father and daughter. Ellie finds herself at home in Jackson and makes new friendships with Dina and Jesse. She also starts pursuing relationships and living almost like an ordinary teenager from our world. By the time 5 years have gone by, Joel and Ellie have become integral members of the community. Joel heads out on patrols and uses his pre-apocalypse experience in construction to help build up parts of Jackson for new residents. Meanwhile, Ellie takes shooting lessons from Tommy and finds her own place in the world. Over the course of these years, however, the tension has slowly risen between Ellie and Joel, because the truth can't stay hidden forever. By the time The Last of Us Season 2 takes the audience to Seattle, the city is engulfed in war. This isn't the fight between the WLF and Fedra, because that particular battle took place entirely off camera. Instead, the WLF are fighting a group of people who seem like religious fanatics. They wear robes, shun technology, cut scars into their own cheeks, and worship a woman referred to as the Prophet.
Free him, that he may know her love.
Isaac somewhat derisively refers to this enemy faction as the Scars, but fans of The Last of Us Part 2 know that they call themselves Seraphites. The game has surprisingly little to say about them, their religion, or the origin of their conflict with the WLF. Players need to look for notes and dig into hidden clues to piece together their story. HBO's version of The Last of Us will almost certainly explain more about the conflict between the Seraphites and the WLF than the games, but fans are going to have to wait a while for that information. Season 2 reveals very little about the conflict between the two groups, but it's safe to assume that Season 3 will get into it. Ellie is a smart girl, and she's not really fooled by Joel's story about what happened in Salt Lake City. Her doubt shows in the ending of The Last of Us Season 1, and it continues to gnaw at her as Ellie settles into her new life in Jackson. The beginning of Season 2 reveals that after 5 years, these doubts have all but destroyed her relationship with Joel. But it's not until Episode 6 that we really get to see what happened between the two of them. When she first arrived in Jackson, Ellie wanted to believe Joel's story and to live a relatively peaceful life with him. It's only very slowly over time that she starts running out of patience with him. But because she's too afraid to directly confront him about what happened at the hospital, Ellie begins acting out in other ways, eventually moving out of the house and into the garage.
So all the teenage all at once, huh?
In the games, Ellie goes to Salt Lake City and sees the aftermath of what happened for herself. In the show, she works up the courage to talk to Joel about what happened the same night as she shares her first kiss with Dina and Joel attacks a disgruntled man named Seth at the New Year's Eve dance.
If you lie to me again, we're done.
Joel confesses everything, but says he doesn't regret what he did because he truly loves Ellie and wants her to live. She admits that she's not sure how to forgive him, but now that the air has finally been cleared, she says she wants to try. We meet Abby and her friends in the immediate aftermath of Joel's assault on the Firefly base, but after that, we don't see them again for 5 years. The Last of Us Season 2 has little to say about what Abby and her friends experienced during their time in Seattle, but it does show us where their journey ends. She found out that Joel went to Jackson, and we see her group arrive outside the community in the dead of winter. They don't know what to expect from Jackson, and most of them start to panic once they see the town in its full glory in the light of day.
It did not look like that in the dark.
It's safe to say that it's significantly larger than any of them had anticipated, and Abby's crew suddenly has doubts about being able to even find Joel in the community, much less how to kill him without being captured in the process. Abby has no patience for doubts or second thoughts, though, and she's determined to charge the town streets herself if that's what it takes. Fortunately for Abby, that's not what it takes. Anyone who played the games spent their time watching HBO's The Last of Us anxiously awaiting one moment in particular. Season 2 basically follows the same path as its video game counterpart with just a handful of notable differences. In the show, Joel and Dina are out on patrol together while Abby is busy watching from afar and planning her assault. There's a lot that happens here in a very short amount of time. First of all, there's a blizzard blowing in, then Abby stumbles across a sort of mass hibernation pit for infected underneath the snow, which she wakes up. Whoops. Abby sprints off across the mountain to get away from the growing horde on a route that coincidentally takes her straight to Joel and Dina. While they're all trying to figure out how to escape the infected, she catches Dina saying Joel's name, realizes who she's with, and offers to take them to safety at the lodge where she and her crew are staying. They make a break for it with the horde hot on their heels, but during the chase, the infected turn towards Jackson instead and nearly overrun the entire town. A lot happens during that assault, but suffice it to say, the townsfolk narrowly survive total annihilation. Meanwhile, Abby, Joel, and Dina make it back to their cabin, and as soon as Abby introduces them, things suddenly get tense. Abby's friends drug Dina to knock her unconscious, which leaves Abby plenty of time to talk to Joel.
I saved your life.
What life?
Once Joel is more or less incapacitated, Abby explains exactly who she is and why she's been thinking so hard about Joel for the last 5 years. As it turns out, the surgeon Joel shot at the end of Season 1 was Abby's dad. And that's when the golf club comes out. Abby takes her time beating Joel in a brutal sequence, even by this show's standards. Worse, Ellie shows up right at the end and watches as Abby ruthlessly kills Joel. It's something that game fans knew was coming, but still makes a serious emotional impact and sets the stage for everything that happens next. Ellie would have chased after Abby's group immediately if it had been possible, but her injuries were so severe that she needed medical attention in Jackson. It takes several months for Ellie to heal, and through all that time, the people of Jackson are also trying to recover from the devastating infected attack. Once Ellie is back in fighting form, Dina finally tells her what she remembers about Abby's crew, saying that they had WLF patches and probably came from Seattle. With that, Ellie is ready to chase down Joel's killers immediately, and when the town council decides not to send out a revenge party, Ellie resolves to sneak out with whatever supplies she can and hunt Abby on her own. Fortunately, it's not hard for Dina to guess what Ellie has planned, so that night she comes to Ellie's garage fully prepared, with a route to Seattle planned out and all the necessary equipment Ellie didn't think about.
And is that all guns, or do you have medical supplies in there? No?
With the further help of that guy who got mad at them at the dance, Ellie and Dina ride out of town the next morning. The journey from Jackson to Seattle isn't short, but no amount of time could adequately prepare Ellie and Dina for the situation they stumble into when they reach the big city. On their first day in the city, Dina and Ellie realize that this mission is even more dangerous than they'd expected. Shortly after reaching the city, the women see signs of the WLF at a nearby television station. They check out the building, and inside, they find a horror show. WLF soldiers who have been massacred by scars, cut open and hanging from ropes. Before Ellie and Dina can really register what they're seeing, more WLF soldiers arrive and begin scouring the building for scars. Ellie and Dina escape the building and, after a harrowing close encounter with infected, come across an abandoned theater. It's as safe a place as any for a temporary base for a few seconds.
Okay, it's not perfect, but if anyone tries to get in, it'll buy some. What are you doing?
Dina pulls a gun on Ellie because she saw Ellie get bit. The audience knows it's no big deal, but it takes a little bit of explaining to put Dina at ease with spending an evening with a recently bit person. Once Ellie explains her whole immunity thing and they get that out of the way, Dina and Ellie get to more serious topics, namely, Dina is pregnant with Jesse's baby.
So we're all having a baby.
Ellie's second day in Seattle is extremely eventful. For her part, she's thrilled about getting the opportunity to raise a child with Dina, and in the morning, Dina insists that her baby doesn't change anything about their mission, promising that she's as committed to finding Joel's killers as ever. With that matter settled, the two head into the city to search and, before long, find themselves caught in the midst of the war between the WLF and the Scars. Neither faction is friendly toward Ellie and Dina, and soon they're running from both groups as well as pockets of infected. Their mission would be over right here if it weren't for the intervention of a familiar face when Jesse swoops in and picks off some of the people chasing them. He explains that after they left, he and Tommy decided to go after them. Now Jesse wants the three of them to reunite with Tommy and get out of Seattle as quickly as possible. That's easier said than done. They have a group of WLF after them, which sends them into a park which, wouldn't you know it, is Scar territory. They witness a brutal Seraphite ceremony. Dina gets shot with an arrow and they separate, leaving Ellie on her own while a band of Scars hunts her down by torchlight. Yeah, not a great day for Ellie. She gets away from the Scars and makes her way to a hospital where she hopes to find Nora, one of the crew from the cabin, so she can ask her nicely about Abby's whereabouts. Nora makes a break for it, leading to a tense chase through the abandoned rooms and hallways and into the basement. Not just any basement, though. The cordyceps has evolved here and can be transmitted via airborne spores, and this basement is thick with them. They don't affect Ellie, of course, but Nora is a different story. They go to work on her immediately and start turning her into one of the infected, but before that can happen, Ellie asks for Abby's whereabouts again. And this time, she's a little less nice about it. Let's just say that's not a peace pipe.
Where is she?
After Ellie's rendezvous with Nora, she heads back to the old theater where Jesse is busy trying to get that arrow out of Dina. Jesse continues to pressure Ellie and Dina to return to Jackson, but first they have to go find Tommy. Dina can barely walk, so she's useless and stays back at the theater while Ellie and Jesse head back into the city to locate Tommy. Jesse's a little sore about the whole pregnancy thing and spending days on the brink of death trying to track down Ellie and Dina, but for the most part they make a good team, sort of.
Because of you, we're stuck in a war zone. So how about we skip the apologies and just go find Tommy so I can get us and my kid the out of Seattle.
But when push comes to shove, they understand each other. After they don't find Tommy at the planned meeting point, they're both ready to jump into action when they overhear a frantic radio signal hinting that Tommy's in a firefight with the WLF at the marina. They're both people of action, but in this case, they have different priorities. While heading to Tommy's location, Ellie spots a Ferris wheel in the distance and decides to go there instead, thinking she might find Abby there. She splits ways with Jesse after a heated argument about what's truly important and makes her way towards that Ferris wheel, all while a raging storm builds. In the bigger picture, Isaac is planning an all-out assault on the Scars to hopefully bring a crushing end to the war once and for all. All these events begin to unfold simultaneously so that when Ellie is briefly captured by the Scars, she's saved by alarms sounding from the Scar village once Isaac mounts his amphibious assault. With this battle raging in the background, Ellie prepares to make her last stand against Abby at the aquarium. To her surprise, Abby isn't there. Owen and Mel, two of Abby's cohorts, are though.
Where's Abby?
You gotta be kidding me.
They don't tell her anything useful, and when Owen makes a sudden move for a gun, Ellie pulls a Joel and shoots him. The bullet goes straight through him and hits Mel, who's pregnant, in the neck, killing her too. Of course, it's not that simple. Mel doesn't die right away and pleads with Ellie to perform an emergency C-section to get her baby out. Heartbreakingly, Ellie can't do it.
Is it out?
It's sort of a wake-up call for Ellie, and after Tommy and Jesse show up to get her out of there, she finally decides that she's done enough to these people. Even though Abby's still alive, she'll head back to Jackson. Of course, it's not that simple. Right then, right when she's finally decided to leave Abby to her own ends, Abby shows up at the theater with a loaded gun and a few questions about Owen and Mel. She shoots Jesse right off the bat and holds Tommy at gunpoint. Ellie pleads for her to let Tommy go, but Abby's in no mood to negotiate with anyone. She turns the gun on Ellie and cut to black. Talk about a cliffhanger. The show then ends on a shot of Abby waking up at the WLF headquarters in Seattle on the first day that Ellie arrives in the city, setting up Season 3. It's a bit of a rushed ending, sure, but as fans of the game already know, there's plenty more story yet to come.